A small refresh, but a nice refresh. Mobboy sent this my way to take on a test drive and share some thoughts. I've had it roughly for 2 whole battery charges now. The TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro. Mobboy taking the TicWatch Pro 5 and tweaking a few things in hardware and software. Right up front, this is not a radically different watch. It's not a TicWatch 6. If you got my review of the Pro 5, it's functionally very similar to the Enduro. Mobboy has a specific flavor of Wear OS. The dual screen is the crown jewel feature of their Pro line, and creates a 2 watches in 1 kind of product, where we've seen some great improvements recently to performance and battery life, courtesy of the Qualcomm W5 Plus Gen 1 chip. And the other benefit here is the second passive display, the LCD. Instead of trying to minimize the brightness of an always-on OLED, we save a lot more juice by having a whole second screen with, a more old-school tech and with a backlight. TicWatches have been doing this for years now, and it extends the runtime of a watch from a bit over a day, like on my Pixel Watch, to legitimately 3 to 4 days of use, depending on your use. The evolution of this feature into the TicWatch 5 and the Enduro, we have a lot more information on the display, and we can turn the crown to shift data. Instead of just a big clock, you can focus on heart rate, or calories burned, or your blood ox, or you can turn on a compass. The backlight system was also refined to change color based on user preferences and as a gauge for your workouts. The warmer the color, the more intense your workout is. That's a neat adaptation, as I think a watch should be at a glance technology. And if I'm in the middle of a good workout flow, I don't want to interrupt that to see if I'm in a target zone or I'm trying to track little watch complications. And that's the gig with a Mobboy. Allow me to express some of my personal preferences. I'm a hardware junkie. I have 2 critical wants for a smartwatch. I need to have rich notification reply support. And I want, at the very least, the ability to wear it for a weekend away from a charger with an always-on display. All of our fitness trackers easily get better battery life, but I hate getting a notification and then still needing to turn to my phone to reply. If I see it here, I should be able to respond right here. And also, I just don't love the action of waking up a smartwatch. I do a lot of writing, and if I don't move my wrist from my keyboard, I want to be able to see the time. So turning the screen off means I have to gesture, as often just like a subtle move, like just twisting your wrist to point at my face. That does nothing. And on other watches, even a minimal always-on display cuts a noticeable chunk out of your runtime. That's been a critical perk on the TicWatch, that we get the basics of Wear OS, but unique hardware that delivers fantastic always-on battery life. I recently praised the OnePlus Watch 2 for a similar trick around the power draw of Wear OS, circumventing. The OnePlus Watch can be used as a full-fledged smartwatch or as a simplified RTOS fitness tracker. That dual identity helps this achieve fantastic runtime away from a charger. I don't feel Mobboy ever really got enough credit for doing something similar on the TicWatch, and they've been doing it for a while now. This is kind of like 2 watches in 1. And you can power the watch down into an essential mode that Mobboy estimates can run for over a month, while still tracking steps and heart rate and estimating your calorie burn and using the compass. It's a bit more basic than what OnePlus is doing with the RTOS, but it's still a very functional watch. I tend to get a bit defensive on this brand because these watches have been a great fit for my needs. I don't want to lose that. But as I said earlier, Mobboy delivers the basics of a Wear OS watch. So we still have to acknowledge how this company has either fallen behind or has potentially been excluded from the most current versions and support for Wear OS. It is incorrect to say that the watches don't get updates. There have been several bug fixes and patches and OTAs and app updates, and the Pro 5 has genuinely performed better than when it was originally launched. But it is correct to identify that on a Mobvoi, you'll be behind other watches for the most recent Wear OS number. On the OnePlus Watch 2, I've been using Wear OS 4. I'm sure we're about to get more information on updates for the Pixel Watch 2 and Wear OS 5 at Google I/O. And the Enduro, the newest Mobvoi, out of the box, running Wear OS 3.5. There is a bit of rumbling about a beta program to bring the Mobvoi watches up to Wear OS 4, but I'm not confident that'll happen before we get Wear OS 5 on the Pixel Watch. That currently also maintains the core omission of a TicWatch. Like the Pro 5, the Enduro also has no Google Assistant support. I know that's going to be a deal breaker for some folks out there. It's not something I've particularly missed. We lacked it on older Mobvoi and Fossil watches, so I just kind of got used to not using it. And then lately, as I've been bouncing back and forth between Google Assistant and Gemini, it's still not something I can count on to run well on my OnePlus or my Pixel Watch. It's nice when I have it and I can actually use it, but I can still set timers and write notes through the tiles on a Mobvoi, if that's maybe a little less elegant than direct voice actions. So far, most of this video has focused on how the Enduro is similar to the slightly older TicWatch Pro 5, but there are a couple small tweaks to that experience. On the software side, and I imagine this will be offered as an update to the Pro 5, the Enduro gets a fresh coat of paint for the Tic fitness apps. Tic Health has a better organized single column layout for a quick look at all your stats and in individual bubbles that take you directly to the little applets that track your heart rate and steps, etc., etc. It's a cleaner look. And on the back end, now that we're up to Android 3.5, Mobvoi claims better support for third-party apps like Strava. I don't use third-party fitness apps. My needs have always been handled well by whatever app comes with the watch that I'm wearing in that moment. But as long as the other third-party apps are built to work with Google's Health Connect platform, Mobvoi can now connect that to their own hardware. So the low power display and the backlight color should properly talk to a third-party health app for your workouts, while also offering maybe a bit more data than some of those apps might track, like altitude and compass directions. Now, the hardware updates are pretty tough to notice. There is a redesigned crown. It rotates through menus the same way, but it has slightly more spring before the button clicks in. And I think this is to help with accidental wrist activation. It does seem to help when I'm just sort of bending my wrist, but I still trigger it while I'm doing push-ups. I really wish we could offset the crown, like the non-functional dial on the OnePlus Watch 2. I think it would be totally fine to have a crown at an angle that you could still turn to navigate the UI. The other addition is a bit more passive, but it's still pretty nice. The Enduro replaces the Gorilla Glass of the Pro 5 with a sapphire crystal display. This is supposed to be a bit more clear, a bit easier to read, but really, I just like the peace of mind of having better scratch resistance. I've never had any serious issues with Gorilla Glass watches, but I like this trend. The OnePlus Watch 2 this year and Mobvoi using more sapphire is pretty cool. Then outside of those tweaks, much of this is the same. Same size, similar weight, similar case made out of aluminum, 24mm bands, 2 GB of RAM, 32 GB of storage, same OLED for the more rich interaction screen, same fast charging and pogo pin charger, NFC and Google Wallet support. Neither have an ECG, but both can scale up heart rate polling tracking and give some early indications of warnings or of rhythm issues. The battery capacity is the same, though Mobvoi claims the Enduro improves runtime and it's better optimized over the Pro 5 by around 10%. So that 90-hour battery life claim worked out for me as 4 solid days of use, sun up to sun down, with a little room to spare. As I don't do sleep tracking, I can't sleep with a watch on. So it slides into essential mode when it's off my wrist, and it really prolongs how long you can use these watches away from a charger. I really like these watches. This is now a fierce battle. It's a fun battle for features and style and battery life between my OnePlus and this Mobvoi. So I totally appreciate the folks that won't be able to see past the version number after that Wear OS label in their settings. I totally get it. This watch probably won't be for you, but otherwise, I think we get a great companion device for a phone that also helps fill in some of our phone gaps. Like, you don't need to worry about trying to make a brighter and more power-thirsty OLED to read in direct sun when you can use a passive LCD instead. Bouncing back and forth over this trio of Mobvoi and OnePlus and the Pixel Watch, there really isn't a winner, and the personal preference aspect is drilled down even harder, as each of these has their own companion app you may or may not like. To me, the brand name matters less and less, and it really speaks to what kind of ecosystem and health and fitness stats are most important for you. Not entirely thrilled with the direction Google is taking Fitbit, but I also don't think I can get all of my family to share stats on OnePlus O Health. We can't ignore that software influence on a hardware purchase. So I get a little protective of this brand because I feel Mobvoi and Fossil got a raw deal during the Wear OS 3 transition a little while back. As Google was courting Samsung, it felt like the two companies most responsible for keeping Wear OS alive were ignored. As we see Oppo and Xiaomi join the Wear OS ranks, and Fossil has completely ended their run of making smartwatches, I don't want to lose a good competitive hardware option in this space. A company that delivers a unique solution, and in a fashion where, I think for a lot of folks, the benefits will outweigh the compromises. So I will, of course, leave some links down below where you can find more information on the TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro. Maybe shop one of these bad boys online. As always, thanks so much for watching, for sharing these videos, and subscribing to the channel. All the support lately has been absolutely fantastic. Those of you who are clicking on links or hitting my home site, or maybe you're joining the list of names scrolling by on your screen right now from my Patreon, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list is basically the coolest collection of tech pals in the universe, so I hope you'll check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere, but these days I'm spending a bit more time on the Mastodons, a little less so on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and definitely not on the Flickrs, and I will catch you all on the next review.